In this video, we'll be diving into the art of media buying. Full disclaimer, this is not financial advice, but it will make you filthy rich. In this video, I will be taking you through the scales of media buying. What differentiates a beginner from a more experienced media buyer? What proficiencies and prerequisites must a media buyer have at certain levels of these scales? And finally, the most revered question of them all, how much should a media buyer actually get paid and how much do they make? Media buying is a term that gets thrown around a ton in our industry, so it's incredibly important that you and I are crystal clear on what the definition is. So at its core, whatever anyone tells you, media buying is the act of handling the paid spend on various platforms. Regardless of the platform, whether it be social or search, the role is identical, the job is identical. You are handling the actual dollars that you're spending on the company to get placement on their platform. Newsfeed or search engine, doesn't matter. Your role is the same. It is handling the inputs, so handling the spend and handling the actual inputs such as audiences or messaging or copy or placement, and getting an output, which is the actual placement that they are giving you on the platform. Proficiency in media buying truly comes down to the accumulation of said two resources. Better media buyers are generally those that have consumed more information, gone and tested their hypotheses and learnings, and thus have gained more experiences in the trenches. I'll explain what that means more tangibly later in this video. That is the core concept of growing and improving when it comes to media buying and digital advertising truly in general. This is really important to understand because proficiency in media buying does not have a linear relationship with the time you spend actually performing the action and the amount of money that you actually handle. You do not need to spend 10,000 hours to be a world-class media buyer. You also do not have to have spent yourself hundreds of millions of dollars to become an A player. The reason this is important is because media buying and the art of paid media is an incredibly high-paying job, but it's very different than a lot of your other more standardized high-paying jobs, such as being an accountant or a surgeon. This is because generally the more accounts you've handled and the more time you've spent in those fields, the more revered you will be in your position. As an example, someone who may have spent 10 years media buying or 15, 20 years media buying from the incarnation of the fronting ads on Meta, for instance, still might be at the base of the scales. And this is because of the roles that they take on and what they do in their day-to-day, how they manage, how they optimize, and how they sell the ads or the lack thereof. The key difference between bad and excellent media buyers is simply the actions that they take inside and outside the ad accounts. So in other words, the way in which they view the ads. All right, let's dive straight in. So at the very base of the mountain, we go back all the way to the fundamental role of media buying, purchasing placement on a medium. In other words, seeking to match the inputs or the context of the ad with said medium. This basic fundamental is what it actually means to media buy. However, at this very base level, generally media buyers are following a strict system. They are given a structure to follow, a blueprint to follow. They're given all the deliverables and the assets that they need to carry out the action of buying media. And their job is simply to follow the blueprint, follow the process with the given inputs, and essentially buy placement. It's managing, it's campaign building in more simpler terms. So those inputs that you're being given at this level, they result in two different outputs. Obviously, one, as I've mentioned throughout this video, is the actual placement on the platform. But the second thing is the data that you're getting from that platform based on the results. At this level, a media buyer is generally not even aware of those things. They're simply campaign building with the inputs. As you have to gain more experience, you have to build more campaigns and handle various inputs, you will start to understand how the platform works, more specifically how the algorithms work, and what types of things work better than others. On both sides of those key outputs when it comes to the actual placement and the visual of the ad or the output, and also the data. So how certain things impact the data that you're getting back from the ad platform. And with that, important word is you'll begin setting up tests. So the biggest thing that differentiates, I would call it like the level 1, which is the lowest level from a level 2, is that you're now setting up tests. You're not really analyzing the data too heavily yet, but you're starting to set up tests. You're realizing what these inputs are doing. You're now stepping out of the system and you're now following the system to a greater degree because you're now able to work more autonomously with setting up tests. And you're able to make decisions and start to learn how to analyze the data, the another output that you're getting based on those inputs you're putting in. But the thing about media buying is there's so many things you can be doing. So the question then becomes, what should I be testing? And more importantly, where should I be spending my time? At the lower levels of media buying, a lot of the actions and the time is spent inside the ad account. So what is that? Talking about audiences, talking about headlines, talking about ABO versus CBO. We're talking about things and decisions that are being made inside of the ad accounts. This includes things like CTR, CPM, CPC, your cost per click, so click metrics. That's your video view metrics. They look a lot at ROAS. ROAS is generally going to be their most important leading indicator on whether an ad is doing better than another and whether a business is doing well. Now again, this is key because what they're doing is generally inside of the ad account. As you start to gain more experience, you'll start to see what part media and what part paid media and paid search plays within the business, so you will start to zoom out. And while those things, that ROAS and those inputs such as audiences and messaging might seem incredibly relevant at that time when you're inside the ad account, as you start to zoom out and look at the business holistically, the value of those things diminishes significantly. So as you become more of a strategist and you really start climbing to those higher levels of the media buying scales, it's really the way in which that you view the ads and how you're running and growing an account. You're starting to look at things much more holistically. You're starting to manage your ads outside of the ad account because you understand what key variables and inputs more specifically have the highest impact, right? You're looking at things like offer instead of testing audiences. You're looking at these high impact variables like changing your price point or changing the actual content, like the actual intrinsic content you're running, rather than just A/B testing a simple hook. I'm not saying those things are incredibly valuable. They have impact and they can make a large impact. But as you go and you gain more experience, you will be able to differentiate between low and high impact items. And this concept is crucial to scaling because the numbers and the data that you see inside of the ad account, or generally with these third-party attribution tools, only tells part of the story that can be found in the ad account. But that is not what matters when it comes to growing a brand. Another key point to make as you start to scale upon the mountain of media buying is that you're looking at ads differently. You start to really understand the algorithm and you have a great proficiency with how ads work as it pertains to organic content. This is specifically important when it comes to paid media because you're interacting on the same platform, on the same algorithm, and effectively the same engine as organic content. There really is no difference between organic and paid content. So when you start to realize that, when you start to understand that concept, you'll know that CPM and CTR and a lot of these on-platform metrics are actually determined by the content and not not what you're doing with the audience setup or with the campaign setup or these different small needle movers inside of the ad account. It's really about content itself and what you're pushing value-wise in that content. As you start scaling, sales psychology, understanding how your ad works and how your brand is positioned to compare it to competitors. So how can you deposition competitors because of your offer or your branding? How can you build better funnels, reduce the leaks in your funnel, create higher value, higher sales per session for every single session that you're driving to your website or your store? These are the kind of things you start to look at rather than cost per click and CTR. So most of your questions to them all, how much do you get paid at those 4 levels? I'm going to pop up numbers on the screen. At the lowest level, level 1, generally going to be anywhere from $1,000, $1,500 to about $3,000 a month. It's going to depend on how much spend you're handling, how many accounts you have, but generally that's the sweet spot. As you get to the next level, level 2, a more proficient media buyer, generally caps out at around $5,000 a month, so somewhere roughly between $2,500 and $5,000. Then as you go one step higher, which is generally what you call a strategist, they really start to scale based on your proficiency now. So it's going up to about 10K. Generally, a sweet spot is around $7,500 to $8,000 per month for a strategist. And finally, at the highest level, again, this is an infinite ceiling, so it's really going to vary. But at this highest level, generally these head of growths or head of paids or these high-level senior strategists are getting paid $12,000, $15,000 a month. And that can scale all the way up to making $500,000 a year at the highest point, if not more, based on performance metrics and how much they're spent. Media buying for 10, 15 years might only be making $3,500 a month because of the roles they take on. It doesn't have to do with the time you're spending, and that's why media buying really is it's a cool game because, and digital marketing in general, because there's so much to do, but being able to understand what is the highest leverage and the highest impact is what's going to separate yourself from any other media buyer. It's very similar to running a brand, if you will, because those high impact, high value moves are going to be what depositions your brand from any other brand. It's the same thing when it comes to media. It's going to come down to that accumulation of knowledge and set experience. And how do you get that more tangibly speaking is to go and just consume quality content about marketing. So this is Ogilvy, this is Eugene Schwartz, this is sales psychology. There's a man named Nick Kalenda who puts out fantastic content about sales psychology and marketing psychology. That's all for the video. Appreciate you listening and watching in. Don't feel you need to sub or like, but I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Let me know what you think, if you agree, if you disagree, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and we'll catch you on the next one.